Hi folks, this is my first YouTube video, so I appreciate any, any consideration in some of my mistakes that I make during this video. But anyway, we're installing a Tesla Model 3 power lift gate. So Hansshow is the name of the manufacturer. It has a very nice kit that comes in 2 boxes if you buy the Frunk and the trunk. We purchased both of them. They gave us a considerable discount so that we would go ahead and do this video. I hope it comes up to their standards as well as yours. We're doing a DIY step-by-step, so hopefully you'll be able to figure this out if you're deciding to do it in the future. Once again, this is my first video, so have a little leniency on me when some of the comments down below. I know I'll make a few mistakes, but other than that, it's a really good kit. The thing I liked about it is you're able to use the fob, the touchscreen, the app, and you can use your actual button that comes with the trunk to open it. And we were looking at installing the foot kick sensor underneath, but I think we're just going to install the button on the trunk for right now. So you'll open it just like you normally do. And then to close it, you'll push on the button and it'll close just like in the Model S and some of the other manufactured cars out there. Let's see, it is a very great little kit because it's plug and play. You're not having to tap into any wires, which for me is a big relief. I've done a few mods already, but this will be the biggest one I've done so far. And really looking forward to it. I know my wife is really looking forward to having that power trunk lift. Probably the biggest problem we're going to have, there is a shroud, a rubber shroud that comes down and it goes into the trunk. You need to run some wires up into the center section as well as the button that you're going to apply up above to close the trunk. You probably will need a fish. If you're unfamiliar with the fish, it's just a really stiff sort of wire that you're able to fish down through that shroud, hook on the wires on the other end, and pull those wires back through that shroud. I know it's a considerable amount of time. I'm going to try and speed it up for you a little bit so the video doesn't run too long, but I will give you the actual minutes that it took me to get it from the bottom up through the trunk and in through the shroud up to this top section. And I'll go step by step, allowing you some time in between to kind of figure out whether this is going to work for you or not. Once again, sit back, relax, enjoy this video, and we will continue with the demolition, is what I call it. We're going to demo the car. We're going to start taking all the bits and pieces out to be able to have access. We are going to install the controller and as well as run the wires for the power up to the battery via the driver's side. I know a lot of guys are doing it on this side of the car, which is fine. I just see there's a subwoofer and an amp over there, kind of tight quarters. I'm going to attempt to do it this way and we're going to see how that works. Hopefully it'll work out well, and if it does, you'll be able to do that as well. If you have any questions, I'll be putting some information at the end of the video. I will probably show you each of these steps as closely as possible. The lighting in the garage is a little obscured, to say the least, but we'll get you going on this video. And once again, sit back, relax, enjoy the video. All right, guys, I just want to run through everything that came with the kit. There's a fairly extensive wiring kit that comes along with this. This your power wire, this your ground wire, and this the controller wire. This goes into the control box. The power wire will be run all the way through the driver's side up to the battery. And the ground, we're either going to find one on the left side or the right side of the trunk to install that in. But you can notice that connector, that's how you can identify the ground wire. The power wire has red on it. It also has a quick disconnect. That will connect into a fused wire on the other end, and that will connect similar to this connector to your battery. The fuse is there in case something goes wrong. It blows the fuse and keeps the system from harming your car in any way. The next thing is we get 2 struts, strut for the left, strut for the right, interchangeable, pretty heavy duty, they're waterproof. Really nice struts though. They really seem to do a good job on manufacturing these. I did look at these. We were talking about those ball joints. They do have grease already installed in each one of the ball joints. So these connectors will be run specifically over to the controller, which will open the trunk when it's needed. The other thing that comes with it is another wiring harness. This harness has more to do with a lot of your controllers, like the button, the motor. Each one of them have little, like this one says the button plug, so this will go to the button on your trunk that we're going to install. Here's the motor wire. And each one of these connectors will only connect with the applicable plug on the other end. I believe this is actually the little horn that comes with it, and the horn kind of helps you install and set the different settings. What else do we have here? A real nice controller. It's vacuum sealed somewhat into this little bag. It says the electric tailgate. We'll continue with that. You can see it has all the plugs on both sides. And once again, these plugs will only go in if it fits. So it's pretty easy when it comes to plug and play. Indicator lights showing you have power, as well as a couple tabs to kind of use a tie wrap to make that nice and secure. It does come with some 3M double-sided tape, some basic tie wraps. I went out and bought another from Home Depot or Lowe's. You can go down and buy some little more heavier duty tie wraps for the bundles of wire. The last but not least is your mechanism, or motor, I guess you want to call it. Already comes with double-sided 3M tape on there. Here's the latching mechanism. You'll take your other latch off, install this. These wires will be run to the controller. And pretty nice little unit. Really looks heavy duty, should last a long time. Well, folks, here's step one. We went ahead and put a couple of microfiber towels down. You don't want to scratch the paint. You don't want to scratch your nice glass roof. And the way I do things, I normally scratch things up. So as much prevention as I can do ahead of time, I'm going to try and do it. And I'll pass these little tips along to you. I did find a very small, if you can see that, screwdriver. You don't want it too wide because there's a very small indenture to be able to get that screwdriver in there and pop the ring out to remove these struts. All right, guys, you can see I've got a small screwdriver. What you're going to do to remove this strut is there's a little slot here. You can see right here, a little slot. You just put your screwdriver in. Put your screwdriver in, push up, kind of twist while you're pushing. The screwdriver will go in behind there, and then just pop that little band out. The band will come off, just like that, which is fine. That's relieved all the pressure on there. You can go ahead and take that band off, or leave it on. It's optional. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom down here, and I'm actually going to remove the bottom first. And I did put this microfiber towel here to try and protect it because the glass runs right along here. You don't want to scratch your glass or crack it. So it's going to take a little effort. I might just stick the screwdriver in behind here a little bit to pop it off. I'll show you that here in a second. Screwdriver down in that slot and remove that band. It's sticking out there a little ways. Now all I'm going to do is stick my screwdriver in behind here a little bit. And look how easy that comes off. It just popped right off. Actually, the top and the bottom popped off all at once. And you might think this is a little funny, but safety first always when it comes to me. I found a broomstick and put it in the trunk down here, as well as up into the handholds. Once you do remove the strut, you can kind of inspect that ball joint. There's a little grease on there. Go ahead and leave that grease on there. It's very important. And then we can come down and look at the bottom one as well. It seems a little more painted, but there is grease on that. And here's the new strut. The wire's at the bottom. I'm going to install the bottom first. As you can see inside there, there's a little grease in there. A little grease in here. It doesn't hurt to inspect each one of the ball joints also. Just make sure there's no metal fragments or anything. If it does, you can wipe those off. These are looking pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and install them. I will get them lined up. What I do is line up the holes, get them kind of squared away, push the bottom one in, and then push the top one in. I'll show you that here in a second. Guys, I haven't installed it yet. I've lined up the bottom one, down here with the ball joint, up here with the top ball joint, and now all you need to do is press it in. I'm going to go ahead and push the top one in. Just snaps right in there. Now we'll come down here to the bottom. This one seems to take a little more effort, but not too bad. There we go, snapped right in. You can hear it snap in. We now have the two struts installed, the new ones. Wires coming out the bottom. And the second one is over here. Wires coming out the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and remove my stick now. I think with the new struts in there, we probably have a safety feature installed with the two struts to be able to hold this trunk up. All right, we're going to start the demo process, which is basically disassembling all the parts of the trunk, the overhead, up underneath here, and then some of the lower parts. I'm going to start at the top, so I'll keep the camera up around this area. I'll show you how this comes apart. Basically, you're just going to get in here on the back side. There are some you can hear those pop. All you're doing is releasing some mechanism that hold it in place. Come around the other side now. Some of them might break. I have to replace those from Tesla. There we go. That was a good one. This is kind of a sticky point right there. Go on the other side, get that big piece out of there. Just realize the first time it comes off, it's a little hard. There we go. I do have one in the middle here. I'm going to reach in behind and see if I can't help it out a little bit. Now you know what I mean by demo. You're demoing this car, you're taking parts of it apart. Here's the underside, as you can see. There are some green connectors and some white connectors. I'll show you where all those are at. We'll probably reinstall some of these back into the slots for reinstallation. And then some of them we probably might leave on the actual trunk. But we'll get back to you on that. Right now I'm just going to pull everything off, put it into... One thing I like to do is when I do pull things apart, if there's parts that need to go back in the slots, go ahead and take them off the trunk, put them back in here, set it off the side so you don't lose any parts. I did go out and purchase a extractor tool. Very simple, plastic so you don't scratch your car. Flat on one end to kind of get in behind things and pry them loose a little bit. On the other end, I would call it almost a fork type tool that gets in behind those little poppets that you saw me trying to remove the top half of the trunk on that plastic piece. Those pieces pop into holes. I'll show you one real quick. Here is one right here. You can see what they do is they just pop into place. There's a hole underneath. And here's one I did remove. Just a hole that pops into place. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't show you how this works. What you do with this extractor is you get it underneath both sides and then you just pop it out. Out comes the little unit. You can see how it pops into there. Comes out of this little hole right here. I'm going to go ahead and put this back into the plastic shroud that we took out of the trunk so that I don't lose any of the pieces. It's probably a good idea. Extractor is a really nice tool, probably come in real handy. I bought it off from Amazon. It was probably all about $3 or $4. So look on Amazon or in your local stores, you might have one as well. Looks like I actually may have broke the end of this one off, so I'll probably set this one aside and go down to Tesla or even contact them tomorrow, see if I can get some of these replacements. So then when I'm ready to put it back together, I'll be ready. I was just going to give you a quick video of the underside once that shroud is off. You can see the wiring underneath. Plugging and playing all those little connectors with the harness that comes with it. You can see the little holes. Here are some of the white tabs. We went ahead and left those in for now. We did have 5 out of the, I believe it was 8 of the green ones that broke, which is no big deal. I'm sure Tesla breaks them on a regular basis, taking these on and off. So we're going to call up the service center tomorrow and get probably at least a dozen of those things. I'm sure over the time we'll be putting some of those on, taking them off. A few other mods that I had planned, but for right now, here's the underside of the trunk and some of the wiring. Let me show you real quick. Here is where you're going to fish. We talked about that earlier. Fish that wire down through where this wire is going. So you're going to come into this shroud, this rubber shroud. Then from there, it will come down into the shroud on the side where it attaches to the side of the car. And then underneath in the trunk, up underneath here is where that wire comes out. We're going to have to remove this piece of plastic to get to some of that, which is not a big deal. As you can see underneath here, I get the lighting straight away. I've already popped out the center core section. You pop the center core section out, that relieves the pressure on that plug, and then you just pop those out. Once you get those out, you just run along that rubber seal and pull that out from underneath that. We're going to do that real quick and we'll get right back to you. Here's that two-piece unit. Just get the extractor, get in behind here. Be able to pull that center section out. Once the center section come out, just keep pulling on it, and the whole thing will just drop right out. And that's all you have to do on this plastic piece underneath there. Once we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and scan back out here. And with your hand, go ahead and just pull down on it. It does have a couple of quick disconnects underneath there. Same on this side. And underneath, pop it, and the whole thing will just fall right down. You can see how those connectors, these have a little edge to them, so you be sure and get those in first, and then you pop these center section back in. That's the upper piece that goes up underneath here on your trunk. That came right off, pretty easy. I'm going to set that off to the side, we'll get the next piece. Getting back to what I said earlier, I just wanted to show you this two-piece unit that came out of that last plastic piece we took off on the top side of the trunk. That center core comes up, which relieves the pressure on the bottom side. I'm going to go ahead and put those back in where we took them out on the plastic piece. So once again, when I go to put it back together, they're really easy to come off. It kind of gives you a better idea how that center piece pushes down and puts pressure on that. It expands that a little bit and holds that in place. I'll put both those back in the plastic piece so we don't lose them. Next comes the lower plastic trunk flashing. This is where your trunk attaches, the trunk lid attaches to the bottom. This is pretty easy to come out. I think really all you do is come in here, pop that out, and you see it goes in behind the seal here. So you'll have to kind of get that out around that seal as well as it comes along here. Sorry about the shadow there. But, just start pulling on it and it just comes right off. just like that. No real connectors or anything. Once again, you got some quick releases underneath there. Just make sure those go back in the slots. You'll be able to figure that out when you go to put it back in. There's only one slot here. There's one connector here. So once you line those up, make sure you get it back underneath the seal again so the water will stay out of your trunk. That's a good thing. I'm going to set that off to the side now. We'll go on to the next step. All right, we're going to remove the side fabric and the trunk over here. It's pretty simple. The only thing you got to watch out for is the light up here. Make sure you don't pull down too hard on it. The light's still attached. So what I would suggest is probably coming up here first. Reach in behind here. Just use your thumb, push on it. That wire just comes right off. And that way you're not going to harm the light. Then all you got to do is roll your finger down behind here, behind that seal, bring that out. There's a couple connectors in here. I'm going to go ahead and release this connector. Should be pretty easy to get in behind there. It's the same as those other ones. Once you get the core one out, it comes right out. Pretty easy to do. That just gives a little more extra room in here to work with. All right, that gives pretty good access right there. We're going to go ahead and stop. You do see the amp in here, the subwoofer. Everything is connected over here. There's a little bit of room down in here. I can see where the guys are installing those. I'm going to look on both sides to see which one works best for us, and we'll make a judgment at that point. Sometimes it's trial and error on these installations. I know the factory has certain ways they'd like to do things. They actually recommended doing it on the driver's side. That's why I kind of was leaning toward that process of doing it that way. So we'll get back to you on that when we come up with the decision. But for right now, looks like pretty good room down here. We'll check out the left side once we pull the fabric back on it as well. All right, so we got that down. We disconnected the light, trunk light. You got one on each side. It's pretty easy, this connector. You just push on the back side of it, it just pops right off. I did go in and replace these with a little bit better. Abstract Ocean had some better lights, so we went and put those in there. If your charge port ever gets stuck and you can't get open, this little hole right here is where this handle is. Go ahead and pull on that, and that will pop open your charge port. Just a little FYI. Okay, so next we're going to remove the two tail lights that will enable us to run the cord for the strut in behind here and back in behind the into the trunk, which will then be crossed over probably through the bottom and into the controller where we decide to put that controller. I'm still a little up in the air about that, but I think we're probably going to go on this driver's side. Go ahead and get started. First thing I do is get this nut off. Pretty simple. You just take a pair of pliers, just loosen it up, and it just comes right off. And that exposes this little nut here, actually the bolt on the inside. Then you've got two on the inside. We'll put this on the other. See two bolts in here. I think they're number 8s. There's one here and one here. Loosen those up, and then the tail light just comes right out. Don't forget you need to disconnect the tail light wiring harness from the tail light itself. They should just unclip and come right off. Another quick suggestion, these two bolts we're going to remove here. Good chance they could slip down underneath, so I stuffed this microfiber towel in here, but that'll keep the nuts from falling down in behind there and losing those nuts, and you'll be trying to get those replaced somehow. I'm going to remove these real quick and we'll pull the tail light out. Now to remove the clip on the back of the tail light, just push in a little bit, the whole unit comes off, this stays on. So it didn't take much pressure at all to get that off there. One thing I always like to do is put the bolts back on the heads of the, or the nuts back on the heads of the bolts over there, as well as here
That's where that big nut came off. And that way you just don't lose, you know where the parts are, you know where everything's at when you're ready to reassemble it.
Now for me, it's a little dirty in here. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up just a little bit, just to make it look nice and keep the dirt out of there, trying to keep the corrosion down over time. I don't think it probably will have corrosion, but it's always nice to have it nice and clean the one time you get it off. All right, now we're gonna route the wire for the strut coming down. Gonna run it right along this weather stripping and go ahead and put it through this hole behind where the headlight actually plugs into the harness inside. Be very careful to do that. It's kind of a sharp edge on here, so you just want to make sure you're not cutting that wire as you're pulling it through. It's pretty heavy duty wire though, I don't think it'd be much of a problem. And whenever you're working in a wet area, like we have here, what you want to do is bring that wire in through here and create a little loop at the bottom, about like that. If the water does decide to run down here, it'll come down to the bottom of the loop and drip off into this drain area right here, instead of going back into where your wiring harness is. So always leave a little loop there, it's a good idea. And we'll complete the other side the same way. One additional step I took was I took a piece of just electrical tape, cut it to length about, I'd say about 2 inches, folded it over, made a little loop, so it's kind of a double-sided tape. I'm gonna go ahead and put that right in this little area right here where that wire goes. And the thought process behind this is, one, it'll kind of keep that wire in place. And two, this sheet metal here kind of creates a bit of a problem if it ever decides to rub on that a lot. I'm hoping that will keep that to a minimum, not chafe that wire in the future. That should keep it nice and smooth on the bottom there and keep that wire in place. So one other thing I try and do is always think into the future. I'm going to keep this car for a long time, and we're going to try and keep it as safe as possible and in working condition for as many miles as we can keep it. So that should help. I went ahead and reinstalled the tail light after we ran those wires. A couple notes, I guess. Just make sure you put that little loop in there so the water will drain down if you need to, and behind here it'll drain out underneath. Also, when I put it back in, this had a little bit of a gap in here, and I realized that those weren't completely in on the back side, the little spears that go into the holders. Just push that a little bit. You heard a click, clicked in there. Now it's nice and firmly in there. I'll tighten up the bolts and we'll be on to the next one. One other reminder, when you're putting these nuts back on the bolts, you can see that they're metal bolts, but they're connected to plastic. So just remember, tighten them down with a small ratchet, and then go ahead and just snug them up nice and tight, but don't over torque them. You may break these plastic pieces in the back here, and then you'll be buying a new headlight, and that's going to be expensive. So, okay, just one last check. We did go ahead and tighten those two bolts up, or the nuts up, I'm sorry, two nuts up. Make sure you do connect the reminder, just to connect that tail light so it works. If tail lights don't work, that's part of the problem. And then make sure you tighten this outside bolt as well. Once again, not too tight, everything's plastic back here. The wire came down from the other strut that we ran behind the tail light. We went ahead and ran that underneath the carpet here, along with the cable for the latching mechanism. I'll probably tie them together, make for a nice solid support there. Then on the other side we came across, I actually wrapped the two strut wires together with some tape. All right guys, one last little item, where probably the most challenging item of this whole installation will be running the wires that need to connect up above into the buttons and everything that controls the trunk on the trunk lid here, down through this little hole. Then we're going to come down, snake it or fish it into this connector. We've gone ahead and just popped this off, run the fish wire down in through here, and finally down into another little rubberized shroud down below here, coming into the trunk. We'll run the fish down through that area with a little bit of grease. There's what they call a wire pull grease. We'll use that. And then once we get it down through all this, we will pull those wires back up through it so that we can connect it to some of the connectors up above here, which control your trunk to be able to open it from the outside. So we're gonna run that real quick. We'll show you bits and pieces of this. But hopefully it shouldn't take more than about 15, 20 minutes. I'm very, I guess, optimistic on that, but we'll see what happens. We'll get right back to you. Hi guys, just wanted to explain the fish we were talking about. This is a wire fish line. It's for smaller jobs. You can see there's a hard point on the end of it here. Usually you put the wire through here that you're trying to fish back through, and then wrap a piece of electrical tape around both of them, maybe down an inch or two. And then all you do is pull it back through where you're trying to fish the wire to and on out to be able to pull that wire back through. It's a lot easier than trying to put a wire through there. It's very stiff, but yet it's flexible. For our application, we're probably gonna use maybe 3 or 4 of the connectors in sequence, not bundle them all up in one area to make it large, but probably try and make it as small as we can along this edge. Use electrical tape to wrap everything up, and then once we get that done, we will pull it back through to where make a nice clean application. This was bought on Amazon. I think it's $6 or $7. All right, so what I did was I took the lid off this, just dunked that whole fish tape down to the bottom, pulled it back up, was able to get the fish in through that wire. As you can see, all you're doing is trying to get that down through this area here. Brought it down. This is probably the most difficult area, trying to get around this corner right here. I did try and straighten that out a little bit, back and forth, finally popped around the corner here. Don't let it come out too far on this end, because what you want to do is go back into the hole here. Once you get it through that hole, it's pretty straightforward. We fished it out this hole on the bottom side here. We'll go ahead and clean up that fish tape with a little rubbing alcohol or some basic, probably windshield washer fluid or something like that. Just clean it all off to be able to have that tape stick to it. We'll hook up all our connectors and then pull it back through to the other side. Wrap the fish around the wire that we need to thread through there. I did separate the 2 connectors. There was a 3rd connector, which was the biggest one. I put it at the very front. And it took me a while, probably about, I'm going to say 35, 45 minutes. And we ended up fishing the tape in through the trunk, through this little hole up in here. You can see where the wire's coming through. And then from there, we brought it out. We popped this cover off. And truthfully, the best thing to do is try and get that cover all the way around to almost the corner here. Because when you start pulling on this, what happened was the fish was pulling through here and it cut that a little bit. So I'd put a little tape on there. It doesn't look too bad, but I did cut these 2 zip ties. I reapplied a couple zip ties. Looks pretty good right now. And you do have to take this off as well. It's actually a plastic piece on the inside with rubber around it. And once you get it off, it's 2 separate pieces. So make sure you put the plastic piece back in. There's kind of a little lip that goes around here. And make sure you get that plastic piece good and snug on this before you insert it in there. The wires from there come out through here, as you can see. And these are the wires that we will use to hook up the trunk up here. I believe right here on the latch, we'll replace this one. Plug that in, and then the other one plugs back into there. and then it runs from there down the cable into the control box. I went to the driver's side, panned up, looked around, found out that this molding piece will come out. It's pretty easy. You just have to make sure don't catch any wires when you're pulling out on the back side here. I'll show you around on the back side. You see where it, there's just one clip goes into this little hole right here. And then from there, this big cavernous area where I'm gonna mount the, probably the motor and the control panel. Run all the wires over here. Looks pretty watertight. I'm thinking there's a lot of wires over here, so it'd probably be a good area. And we'll just run the wires, the power wires, up along this wire, maybe use a few zip ties to connect it to this wire going up through that area, down along the baseboard of the floorboard, and then all the way to the front, connected to the battery. Tons of room over here, so we're gonna put the latching mechanism. I went ahead and took that off. I had to go find a Torx that was big enough for this. I didn't own one, so I had to go get one. Might have a friend that you could borrow one from or something, but Home Depot, Lowe's has them. Went down and got that, ran the cable for that around to here. See if I can't get some better light on it here. And we put the motor down here along the side on the beam. It's got double-sided tape on it, so it sticks nicely to that. Run the cable. I think what I'm going to do is mount that control box right here on this pad right here. Doesn't look like there's any moisture getting in there. Good, flat, clean surface. I'll put a little rubbing alcohol on that, clean it up a little bit, get the dust and dirt off from it, and then I'll attach that. Once we get the power wire ran, I believe I showed you that, or I will show you that. We're just gonna run the power wire from there up through this cable, back in through there. You can see the gap towards the front. We're gonna run right along there, and then I'll show you coming around here. All right, as you can see, I did take the side shoulder harness, I guess, padding off. It's in the corner here. There's a latch down here. Just make sure this latch on the side here goes in there. This bigger latch goes in the slotted rectangle down there. And then up here you have a plastic piece that this has to fit in. And make sure the seat is down to do that, otherwise you'll never get it in. We ran that power cord up through the driver's side of the trunk. You can see it running right along on top of the, I guess that's the power cables that go to your batteries from your charge point. And then right underneath here, there's a little, very little gap to slide that in there. Once I did that, then I just started pulling back the trim, tucking it in here. And it seemed to tuck right underneath that plastic almost. So I'm going to continue with that. See, I'm just tucking it right in there till I get to about this point right here. Then I'm going to go and probably pop this up around the edge here and slide underneath there. Should go underneath the seat belt. And then from then on to the front seat. I'll bring the camera around here and show you. I did go ahead and pop this one off just to see how easy it was. There was, I took my flathead screwdriver, stuck it right in there. This piece popped off. This piece popped out and then lifted off. Pretty easy, just lifted right off. I'm gonna run the wire right along this channel, along with these other wires. And then from here, took a flashlight, put it up in there, and there's a gap up in there. You can run that wire right in through there, right to the battery, so it should be a pretty easy application. I don't think you can see it right up in there right now, but should be a pretty easy run. And then once we get that completed, we'll finish up a few last details, put everything back together, and hopefully push the button and see what happens. All right, this gives you kind of a better idea. This is up underneath the dead foot pedal is what they call it, next to the brake. It's on the left-hand side of the driver's side. I was able to get, by fishing through there with fairly strong fish wire, pushed out on the other side. I could see where that was coming through, and I was able to cut on that side, staying away from all these wires. These wires are going through an area. I don't know if I can make that a little closer for you or not. There's a rubber boot in there that has, it's like double-sided, so one side this goes through, and then the other side is the actual wires are going through it. So it's actually a two-piece unit, kind of good little design, but a little tough to get through. You tape it off, pull the actual power wire back through that area, and we'll hook it up to the battery and get everything else hooked up, and we'll see if it works. All right, y'all, we were able to get that fish through. You see the fish wire coming through. It is in the bottom down there where that bundle of wires was. It's kind of hard to see up underneath here, but you can see that bundle of wires coming out. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit and get that a little clearer picture for you. Right down in there, as that bundle comes out from the firewall, it has a rubber grommet all the way around it that's coming through. What I ended up doing was, there was one little area in there that seemed like a pretty good place to poke through it. And I won't lie to you, this took about an hour to get this figured out. Wasn't much on the internet with where this comes through, since we are doing the driver's side. I finally figured it out. Once I got it figured out, it took me about 15 minutes to get the fish up underneath there. I cut a little hole on this side of it, trying to stay away from all the wires that are existing, and was able to get it through that area. As you can see on the back side there where that fish is. All right, now that we're going to hook up the power to the battery, just pops right off. Grab the corner, that's probably the easiest way to start from there. Put that off to the side. And from there, you can see where the battery is. It's right underneath here. See the red positive terminal over there? We need to go ahead and pop this off to get in behind there. It just has these little pop releases as well. Put your hand in behind there and they just pop right off. Just set that down in here. All right, so here's your red positive battery terminal. Get a ratchet or a wrench, hook up to this, loosen it up, and then there's a couple ways of doing it. I'm not sure. I've seen other guys do it. My thinking is you want to keep this red cover on as much as possible. That keeps the corrosion and everything down. And I'm going to try and figure out, maybe come from the bottom, hook it up so when I put this back on, it will still be nice and tidy and neat, and maybe even put a little slice in here so that it'll fit nice and tight. Just a couple things when you are taking this off. You are touching the positive side of the battery terminal, which means if you have a metal wrench like I do and come in contact with any metal surface, which there really isn't much around this area, but if you do, it will spark and it could damage your battery. So be very careful of loosening this up. That's probably good. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the wires, hook those up, and I'll show you the end result. What I did with the power cord was ever so gently bent this just a little bit so it'll fit underneath here. I'm gonna go ahead and probably bend it back, bring it back around here. Since we are coming in from this direction, we'll be able to hook it back behind here to keep it out of the way. So whenever somebody's working on it, they don't accidentally hit that and disconnect that. This is a quick disconnect. Here's your fuse, inline fuse, which is a good thing to have so that if
ever have a surge or something like that with your trunk or frunk, it will blow the fuse. If you look at it real close, you can see that little loop in there. Usually that loop is what separates the left to the right side. If you ever have a problem with it, first thing I would do is come pop the top off this and look at that little loop, see if that's broken. I mean broken, they're not connected. And that might be a problem. Sometimes all you gotta do is just replace the fuse. Fuses do get a little worn over time and get weaker, so something today may not affect the fuse, but maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, you may see a fuse get blown. So be sure and check this fuse in case you ever have a problem with your trunk or frunk opening. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this up, and we'll run the wire back behind here, and then we'll hook it up. All right, that's what it looks like. I went ahead and hooked that up, ran the wire back behind here a little bit, and I'm just gonna leave that there till we run the wire up to the front here, and we'll connect the two together. Then we'll have power to the control box, but this will probably be the last thing we will do is hook this up, and then we'll be able to check the control box, make sure it's getting power at that point. All right, just finishing up a few of the odds and ends. They do want you to remove these. Basically just pop off, just kind of wrestle them around and they come right off. Got little connectors in there. Not gonna hurt them, they just pop right off, and then you come back with the smaller bumpers. Go ahead and put that on. They just fit right in there. There, just like that. And you got one for each side. Complete those, and we'll go on to the next step. All right, we have these connectors now. So we just want to, I guess, update you. I did kind of zip tie the excess up here to get it out of the way. Measure these out so they work pretty well. These two go to the switch over here, right on the unit itself, where the trunk latches. So you go ahead and reach in there, pull that out. The one that looks just like that goes right back in, clicks in, and then this one will go in to the plug and play portion. And it clicks in. And then I'm just going to kind of route it out of the way here, try and clean things up. Now you have two left. You have the yellow-green and a white one, small white one, which says, I don't know if you can read that or not, tailgate button. So when you install the button up here, I'll show you what I did. Here's the trim piece that goes on the back. The button that goes on here has a connector, and that's where the white one goes. And you'll connect that in. This one, the yellow-green, go back up underneath on this right here. So you'll pull that one off, put it in the, I assume the yellow one here, and then plug this green one back in. All right, just wrapping a few things up here, trying to tidy things up and put everything back together. As you remember, we routed the wires up through here. The wire pulled silicone that we got at Home Depot worked extremely well. I didn't find the fish pulled too much on this. Really, it's easier just to work it through here. Put a bunch of that silicone in the tube when you start, and then start working your way up. And it was pretty easy. I mean, it wasn't that easy, but it took us about a half hour. I did most of it by myself. My wife came out and helped for about 3 or 4 minutes, just steadying a couple things and trying to fish the wire in. But from there, the wires come up into the trim piece here.
underneath here. I ran them over to the middle section, brought them out, and of course that one wire, the white one you saw earlier, came into the latching mechanism, and the second wire, the green and yellow, the green did get plugged in. Unplugged the gray wire that was existing and plugged that into the yellow one, which connects your trunk release up here. So that's all completed. Got the trim put back in. Here's the button. You can put it anywhere you want. I've seen people put it on the right side, the left side. Usually it seems like I'm opening the trunk, loading up my right hand. My wife agreed. She said left side, so it's probably a good idea. I have seen them put them down here, even on the side of the carpet, and that's fine too. It's I guess if you want to, you just reach in and push the button and jump out of the way. But I think probably the smarter choice would be put it up where we did, because I don't want to get hit by the tailgate if I'm a little slow reacting to that. But yeah, it's pretty good design. Looks pretty good. I think it'll be attractive. Just make sure you pull out all the clips. I've seen some guys try and put the trim piece back on with some of the clips already existing in the trunk and then trying to position them back. I tried that on a couple. It took forever. So I went ahead and pulled all the clips out. Went to Tesla. Actually picked up all brand new clips, so they're all nice and tight, which was something I like to do. Get good replacements, that way they aren't loose or anything and you're not getting any rattles in the future. Go ahead and finish up connecting the control box and we'll see if it all works. This is the wire. Came down from up above where we ran it through the rubber shroud. It comes down, we connected kind of with zip ties. And connected zip ties, you can see the zip ties right there. Connected that with the strut wire. Ran that across in here, all the way across the other side. Once again, we're installing this on the driver's side. All the wiring, control box, motor, suction motor and everything. So here's what we did. We put the suction motor down here, ran the wiring across here, comes up and goes to the latching mechanism. From there, we ran all the other wires across to the driver's side, bundled them all together in this nice little bundle right here, attached it with 3 zip ties. Put the control box up on the side here. I think it looks pretty clean and out of the way. Nothing really to hold it other than 3M tape. If that doesn't work, it's easy access, so I can always come back and put it down a lower place, or even wrap it with some foam rubber or something like that and just set it here in the bottom. But for right now, we put it up here. Connected all the connectors. It's pretty straightforward. Color coded, excuse me. Purple to purple, blue to blue, gray to gray, white to white. Everything gets plugged in and we should be ready to go. There's one last cord I didn't tell you about, I guess. It's a black cord, the one with the buzzer with the red connector and the black connector. It said light. You connect that to this splitter wire, run one over to the left light, and then run one over to the right light, and that will power the 2 lights. You'll just keep those existing ones just disconnected altogether.